If you struggle with a decision, there are two things that might happen. First, it might be that you have labeled the decision as a difficult decision to make from the very beginning, even before starting to think about it. Secondly, it might be that you're overthinking the decision-making process. So let me talk about these two potential reasons why you're struggling with a decision, and I'll go through them one by one. Sometimes it happens that from the very beginning when we need to make a decision, we already have a label attached to that type of decision. So for example, let's say the scenario is that someone wants to quit their job and become a freelancer. Some people say this is a difficult type of decision, and when they do that, they already put a wall in front of the decision that is right for them. And imagine yourself that first you need to climb a wall in order to even be able to think through the decision in a clear way. That wall might put you in a state of wanting to avoid the decision altogether. That wall might lead you to overthink, to feeling anxious, to feeling scared and stressed about making the decision. And it does make sense, because if you also have a wall that you need to climb that you're not expecting to be there, that might be more challenging to climb because of any reason, then I can see how someone might struggle with this type of decision. The thing is, when we label something as being difficult, we are already telling our mind that they need to treat that thing as something difficult. And then the mind goes into a different state when trying to deal with it. It believes the decision needs more effort, more time, more energy to be made. And that in itself can lead to someone just not wanting to engage with the decision in the first place. Equally, if your mind believes that the decision requires more time, energy, and effort, it allocates from the very beginning a higher amount of capacity that the decision requires to be made. So let's say if normally the decision would have required just 10% of your mental capacity, saying that the decision is difficult to make will increase that percentage to 20, 30, 50, and so on and so forth. And we all have a limited mental capacity to make decisions. So we have to be wise with how we label the decisions we need to make. It is true, our tendency to label decisions as being difficult is a result of us thinking about the level of impact and risk those decisions have on our life. So for example, given the example I was just sharing, someone considering if they should quit their job and become a freelancer, when someone is in that state, there might be financial implications they need to take into consideration. There might be identity implications. There might be social, professional, so on and so forth. A lot of type of implications that type of decision may have. And depending on the context in which that particular person is, the decision of becoming a freelancer might have a high risk and impact than the other option, which is to not quit the job, or vice versa, because as I mentioned, the context really dictates what is the answer for this particular person who needs to decide if they want to quit their job and become a freelancer or not. Thinking about the level of risk and impact a decision has is one thing compared to saying making a decision is difficult, because the decision-making process is quite straightforward. It's just a process of gathering information and connecting it into an image that makes sense and is clear to you. That's all there is to it, regardless of the type of decision you need to make, its level of complexity, risk, and impact on your life, and so on and so forth. Now let's talk about the second scenario in which you struggle with a decision because the decision-making process is overcomplicated for you. It may be that indeed the way you think about the decision and your thinking process is too complicated, and that in itself creates a barrier that prevents you from actually being able to make the right decision obvious to you. As I was mentioning before, if you think about the decision-making process as being just a process of gathering information and connecting it into an image that makes sense and is clear to you, the decision-making process should feel simple and easy. And the reason for that is because the mental capacity you have to process the actual process of the decision-making process is quite low. Imagine this. you need to make a decision, and someone tells you that you need to use a specific framework that will help you with making the decision. And then you try to implement that framework, and then just the feeling of going through the framework scares you, because it's so much out there that you need to do, so many questions to ask yourself, so many things to take into consideration, and so on and so forth. And it's true, there are some decisions that are quite complex, and a lot of information needs to be gathered and connected together. But focusing on the complexity of the decision and on the decision-making process are two separate things. Because going back to what I was sharing a bit earlier, the label you put on the decision-making process will dictate how you feel about going through it. If you feel it's easy, then aiming to make the decision will feel easy. If you feel that the decision-making process is difficult, you will feel when trying to make the decision that the process is quite difficult. And that's why, if I were to give an advice, that would be to simplify in your mind the decision-making process and the core principle behind it. And that's why this core principle I was sharing about just now, meaning that the decision-making process is just a process of gathering information and connecting it into an image that makes sense and is clear, will help you think that the decision-making process is simple, and therefore struggling with it will no longer be the case. With all this being said, if you struggle with making a decision, think about the labels you already attached to both the decision itself and the decision-making process. It could be that in itself prevents you from making decisions with ease, yet if that is not the case, reach out to me and I will help you figure what is the cause that makes you right now struggle with the decision that you need to make, so that we can eliminate it and make the right decision obvious to you with ease.